This particular event creeped me out for some quite a while. And my name is Jenny. At the time, I was only 22 years old and I just moved into my new apartment in town. It was a decent sized apartment for myself though, and I actually enjoyed it. And then just the very next day after I had finally moved in, I met my next door neighbor, Kevin. Kevin was about 2 years older than me, so he was about 24. And he was actually polite, and he told me that he has been living in this apartment since for about 2 years. So he basically moved in around the same age as I was, so at least was something in common. And we started to actually happen that we ran into each other either in the hallway or we just small talked at either in my place. And we get to know each other a bit better, and I actually start to enjoy his company from time to time, even though we were around the same age group, so I didn't mind. But when Valentine's Day came around, Kevin asked me if I wanted to go out with him, and I thought, since he has always been so kind to me and helped me with some things when I needed it, so and I was single at the time, so I thought, why not? So I accepted it. So he decided, he took me to this nice Italian restaurant in town, and I was really felt lucky. I mean, even at the restaurant, he was a true gentleman. But even if I knew back then about his true colors, his true personality, I would have said no. But even after my first date with Kevin, it went actually pretty much nice at that time. And even after first date on Valentine's Day, he did ask me if I want to go out again, since he was always polite and he made me laugh during dinner. So I said yes. But a month after we started dating, we made it official. But I started to see a whole different side of Kevin. Even though we only been dating for just 1 month, which I'm glad that we didn't actually move in together, which probably could have saved my life otherwise. But when it happened when he was over to my place, even though he lived across the hallway, which was like cross hallway neighbor in a sense, he sometimes when I had my phone, he asked me who was I was talking to. I said it was my could have been either with my brother or if I mentioned it was an old friend of mine. He asked if it was a female or a male. I was a little bit surprised when he even asked that, but honestly though, I wanted to understand the reason to be, but I couldn't only understand if he just curious. So I told him as I was a male friend. He lost it. He said that I was not allowed to talk to any other men or other guys when I was dating him. I was really taken aback, and I told him that it's just an old friend of mine from high school or college. But he didn't believe me that. He forbade me to even talk to any male, even including my own family members. I was getting seeing sign of him of being obsessive. He couldn't tolerate that I was talking to anyone. And even that was really crazy. But one day I got a call from my old friend Victor. Victor and I had been best friends since we were back in elementary school. I haven't seen him for the past few years since he actually moved away to college. And he ended up staying in that particular town after he was offered a work position. And we did talk from time to time on Facebook or something like that. But he just one day simply just called me and saying that he was in town for about a week for to see his family, and he asked me if I wanted to hang out. And it had been a while since I saw him, so I was like, "Yeah, why not? Let's go for coffee." So we decided to meet up at this cafe the next day. And when I was at this cafe with Victor, we were just small talking, and suddenly my phone buzzed. It was Kevin. He was just asking where I was since I wasn't home. So I simply told him I was out with a friend. So he asked me if there was a male or friend, a female friend. I know what his reaction would have been if I told it was a male, but Victor is a close friend, and he was just in town for about a week. And I told him it was a male friend. And just only a few seconds later, he called me, and as I was about to answer, he screamed on the phone, even as so loud as Victor could hear it. He told me to get home immediately, and I was like, I'm out for a friend, but he's then like interrupted me and said, that friend is now forbidden to ever see you or even talk to you. If you even at home within the next 10 minutes, I will get you there, or even have to drag you home. He was screaming that, and suddenly, before I can even say another word, he hung up. Victor just looked at me surprised and asked, "What's that about?" And then I told him about Kevin, my next door neighbor, who is my boyfriend, and Victor laughed and said, "That dude sounds but not as a boyfriend should have been," he said. And I totally agree with him. But I shouldn't have just left. I should have stayed there. But I knew that the problem was if I didn't show up, Kevin would have found me at the cafe and start a problem. So I told Victor that I had to go home, but luckily though that if Kev or Victor hadn't been there for me, I don't know what else would have happened. He said that he would come with me because based on how the tone Kevin sounded like, it pretty much understandable. So luckily I have my 6'2" bodyguard friend there. He was built like a bodybuilder, and he often goes to gym. He told me, and I thanks for that I did bring him, because when I did get my home, I found Kevin outside the apartment. He looked very pissed off. Anybody had to say as much. He started calling me this on a bad word in a book, probably all that there is. But anyways, when he saw Victor behind me, he then freaked out and told me that I can't believe that you've been shielding me. I was like trying to laughing, and Victor is the same thing, and he told Kevin to calm down. I'm just only his friend. That he is my friend, and we hadn't even seen each other since he moved away. But Kevin didn't buy it. He believed that I had been cheating with Victor the whole time behind his back. Especially those times when I wasn't supposed to be home, when I said I was either at work or if I was at the grocery store or something. But then he walked up to me and slapped in my face, and that I was scared. That was the first time Kevin has ever been like it. And then Victor stood in front of me and said, "Dude, calm down. Leave or I will call the police on you." And that makes Kevin even more furious. But then I said, "Kevin, we are done." He lost it even more. But before anything could happen, Kevin just left and went to his apartment. For the next several weeks after all this, Kevin tried to talk to me in the hallway or tried to knock on my door and ask if we can talk, or if I can get inside. I know if he would even get in my apartment, it is unlikely I would even get out there for myself. But I refused to even talk to him. And one morning, when I was about to go to work, I found both of my back tires had been slashed. I knew immediately it was Kevin. But since there were no cameras at the front of the door or in the parking lot, there was nothing I could have done about it. So I took an Uber. But at the same day when I was getting home, I was almost hit by a car. And luckily though, I managed to hear the sound behind me but as I was just laying on the ground, I saw the car just didn't stop, it just kept going, but I immediately recognized the license plate. It was Kevin. I managed to take a picture with it on my phone just in case. I did call the police, and as I was getting home, the police was already there arresting him. He screamed that I was lying. I was made it all up. But the police didn't bother it, didn't buy it, because there were other witnesses in the area at the same time. I was really stunned that Kevin had even gone so far and tried to hit me by the car. And he was charged for attempted murder, and he ended up in jail for quite a long time. Even from jail, he tried to talk to me by letters, but I refused. And I told the jail that I didn't want to have any more further mail from this particular individual, this psycho, which I would call him. After some time after this event happened, I was scared for quite a while. I even had nightmares that somehow Kevin managed to escape and attack me in my own home. But there was one thing I'm really surprised that had actually happened. About almost a month after all this, I received a call. It was from Victor. Victor told me that he actually had been transferred to my town from work. Not because he didn't after he heard what happened, but it was because he had actually been offered a manager position in my hometown, and he accepted it. It was only after when he found out what happened. He and I went out for a small time just to hang out, and eventually we started dating, and we're still dating in this day. I couldn't even believe how Kevin, from the very start, acted like was seemed to be very genuine. There were no signs of any obsessive thoughts or even of this. But the question is, why? But the other different matter is that before we even made it official, there were no signs of any obsessive thoughts or even behavior. Because when we were around, I was just, if I talked to a friend of mine or even my own brother on the phone, he was actually quite normal. So I wonder what in the world made him to freak out like that, even when we were not even officially dating until like that. So, Kevin, even if you managed to somehow get out from jail, don't ever try to talk to me ever again. Because now I have my most amazing boyfriend and my personal bodyguard. So, thank you. My name is Gina. At the time, I'm going to tell you one particular date that scared me a lot afterwards, and also about this. But not only scared me, but I had the most disturbing date ever with this creepy, crazy guy. And I can just say, at the time when this, before it all happened, I was already in a relationship for 3 years. But my ex-boyfriend broke up with me, and I don't know exactly why. Turned out he's been seeing another lady behind my back, turned out. So I was heartbroken. But after my breakup, I decided to focus on my life, my job, instead of finding someone else to be with. But when Valentine's Day was approaching, my best friend Casey thought I was probably felt I was going to be alone for this particular holiday, which frankly I didn't even mind if I wanted to be alone. But she thought I had a good idea to set me up with a friend or well a co-worker from her own job, Brian. She introduced me to Brian. And sure, I mean he was a decent, good-looking guy, and she suggested that we spend some time before Valentine's Day just so that we could get to know each other. So we did. And we turned out we had some decent conversation at the time, and we even had the same common interests like in music, food, and all that type of things. When Valentine's Day came, he asked me out, and I said yes. He took me to this small, nice Thai restaurant in town, which I have been before, and it actually has good food. And even though that the restaurant really was something very nice, the staff was polite, and even at the beginning, Brian was actually very polite, but as something happened, he started to being act a little bit crazy. And I was like, I was already set in my mind, I'm not going to give him a second chance after all this. I mean, he literally yelled and treated the waitress as such bad way, so negative, calling her such bad names, which I prefer not to be saying, and calling her like worthless that she doesn't even know how to even finish the things, or that the food was too spicy and that he could barely eat it. And even when the customers around us told him to just calm down and doesn't treat her with such bad way, she was just doing her work. And even though, frankly, she wasn't even the one who managed to cook the food, she was only the one that brought it to us. But he told the customers around us to just shut up and mind their own business. Even though, frankly, our ones just didn't want to be giving much thought or giving him a second chance. But after we left the restaurant, he asked me for forgiveness. Well, he just had a bad day before we came to the restaurant and the food, but he made him to snap. And he apologized. And he asked me for a second chance. Unlikely though, I shouldn't have, but I agreed. So we went out the next week for dinner, and the same thing happens again, but this time, really things actually took a real turn. Because during our dinner, he actually tells me that he loves me, and he literally proposed to me, but I told him no. We haven't even known each other that long, and I tried to tell him that I'm not interested in marriage so fast. We had just barely on been our second date, which even to now I started regretting. So I just stood up and I was about to try to walk away from this guy, and just after we had paid our food, he tells me that I belong to him and that I should do anything what I was told to do, since that is the women's role in the world. I was like, what? In my mind, I was like, what? We don't live in the ancient past, man. We live in the future. Well, in the present, we're equal. Where women and men are equals. But in his mind, I was like, he can treat me as a property. But I managed to get out of his grip and run out this restaurant, and I was like, I was terrified because I could hear him behind me, and for some stroke of luck, I ran into someone, and when I looked up, it was my friend Leo, and he was just out with another friend of his, and before even Brian could do anything, I told Leo quickly what just happened, and he was like, well, I'm not letting that happen, because Brian then walks up to us and said that he is my boyfriend, and but Leo tells him to leave, but he refuses and tries to grab my arm, and Leo pushes him away, which made him go into rage mode and tries to attack him, but especially with his fist. But when he didn't know that Leo is a black belt in judo, which is a martial art, Brian takes off, and I never actually heard from Brian after that. And the same evening when I get home, I had to have a serious conversation with Cassie. When I told her what happened, she couldn't believe it. She apologized, and she said that she should have mentioned that Brian has temper and anger issues. And I didn't blame her from this. Well, she should at least told me about his strange behavior from the first place, but frankly, I can't blame her for that. And a few days after this, she told me that Brian was fired from the job. Turned out after she had told her boss what happened, even though since I was not having no connection to this place at all, but it turned out he has been behaved like this, but at some like customers or even some of his staff. So the boss had enough, so he was fired. And well, I was glad at least to have Brian out of my life. And I was just glad for that. And one other thing that's quite something that eventually ended up being positive, because shortly after that I heard about Brian was fired, I was approached by Leo. He told me that for quite some time he was actually have an interest in me. And well, he asked me out and we started seeing each other, and after some while we made it official, and we are still together today. But I had to mention one thing. After that I knew that Brian was fired. I was worried that he would eventually find me and tell me to get married to him, or that he would try to kidnap me. But I never even saw or even heard from him. And G from what Cassie told me, that Brian turned out was arrested. He's tried to even rob a liquor store with a gun of all places. Well, at least that he would end up locked up behind bars for some time, and that was probably the last time I even heard of him. And well, I'm just happy about this second date end up in such nightmare, but eventually led me down the right path to find the right man who I have always been hearing stories about crazy stalkers, ex-girlfriends, ex-boyfriend stories online from like Reddit and other things. My name is Eric, and this happened when I was just 21 years old, and I don't know what actually let these things happen. I had been a single since I finished high school. Since my last girlfriend cheated on me with a soccer player, I was like devastated. But I was now 21 years old, and high school was way behind me. I was actually having a decent good job and had my own house, and but some of my friends started to convince me to try dating again, and I was like, well, it had been a while since I've been actually on a been and having a serious relationship or even a date, so I was a little bit rusty. But some of my friends suggested that I try online dating. So I thought, well, since it was popular and many people did find some of their true love on these particular sites, and I was like, well, what to try it is. But I'm not going to mention exactly which dating site what I used. But I made a profile, and I was actually matched with a girl that was only 1 year older than me, and her name was Lauren. We actually made plans to go out for the restaurant for Valentine's Day, and I was actually happy about it. I mean, we did small talk of only a few days before, and I even heard her voice on the phone, and I was like, she had a gorgeous voice. And on the Valentine's Day, I actually took her to this Italian restaurant, and we actually ordered some pasta. And it was just, I was honestly having a good time. She was telling me some things about herself, and when I excused myself that I had to use the restroom, I came when I came back, I noticed that she was acting a little bit strange or a little bit different. I thought maybe that she was just feeling a little bit bored when I was gone. But I never paid much attention. But then when we were sitting there, she asked me who this girl Emily were. And she noted that I remember I had my phone on the table, and it was actually a text message. And Emily was actually my younger sister, and I did tell her that I was going on a date with a new girl that had been matched on this dating site. But when I told Lauren that was my sister, she didn't believe me and started screaming, how would I can be cheating on her, or how can I be in such liar when I was already on a date with someone else? First, I told her we're not even a couple. And first, and for second of all, she's my sister, and but still, Lauren didn't believe me a single bit that it was my sister. And so I had enough. So I decided to end the date here. And not only that, she started screaming at the waitress that she brought the wrong food or that meat was overcooked. I tried to calm her down, but failed every single time. And I realized there was no plans for a second date with Lauren after this, because this behavior was the bad one. And even after we left the restaurant, she said that she had a good time and we said goodbye to each other. And that same evening, she texted me and said that she had a good time and hoped to see me again, perhaps for a second date. But my gut feeling told me I should not be responding it with, sure, we can go that, but I didn't. I said I did have a good time, but I told her that I couldn't see any potential future between us. And she didn't respond back to that. So for the next several days after all this, I started to notice a car follow me around the town when I went to work, or to the store, or even when I went to see my parents for a visit. And even started to get this mail saying, "You belong to me, you should give me a second chance." And I already knew it was Lauren. But I even went to the police, but they told me, without any actual evidence that it was her, it was just one saying from a statement, so they couldn't do much. But one morning, when I woke up to seeing something on my doorbell camera, I noticed that this figure walked up to my car, and I saw immediately it was Lauren. And I saw that she was doing something with my car, and I know exactly. But it was really early in the morning, around almost 7:30 or 8 in the morning. It was bright out. It was like she didn't even care if that she was being seen or anything. So I called the police on this time and showed them the footage. They have an officer look at the car and realized that she actually had cut my brakes. If I had went off somewhere and tried to brake, it would even worked. I could either be seriously injured or even be in worst case killed. So I was granted by a restraining order against her, but another thing is that she did end up in jail for a short time. And after she got out, she didn't even try to reach out to me. And after that, I decided to stay away from dating for a while till I was ready enough again. So Lauren, thanks for you stay away from me, because frankly, I don't want to ever meet you ever again. So please, don't let us ever meet again.